Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to Painters Motivating Painters Review. Here in the grim darkness of the European winter, we're here to bring you the light of some beautifully painted miniatures from our December monthly end of the month review event. And also, hopefully, for the people who submitted, some nice, positive, constructive feedback to help them take the next steps in their hobby journey through 2025. So, thanks for tuning in. And we're going to start off with Stephen Banks with this awesome, vaguely festive looking fungoid cave shaman guy. We're focusing on clean, sharp transitions and just the usual kind of feedback as well. Cool. Very cool. The basing is very nice. I like how you've got so much like tufts kind of going on. That's like it's like a carpeted tufts, if you know what I mean, which makes sense because that's how grass kind of works. You got a whole riot of colors going on with this guy, which is fairly traditional, and it's hard to pull off, but it's reasonably well balanced out. And it's a good look in general for him. And I like the extra little details that you've added in, like the kind of like the freehand little outliney bits on his mushroom hat thing, and the bottles and all the little spots on the mushrooms and stuff. So yeah, that's all really good work. Very kind of traditional style for this guy, and I like it a lot. I have one of these, and I've been putting off painting it for ages. Anyway, the little bits for improvement, I think some of the green skin is quite solid looking in color. Like you've got obviously a bit of contrast and shading in there, but particularly on his face, like when you look closely, it looks kind of like almost his face is like a skin mask that's on top of everything. So if you just had like some shading towards the edges where it like fades out into his mushrooms and stuff, that'd be nice. And then on his little buddy, just like a little wash around the top of his head. He looks great though. I love that little snotling running away with the mushroom. The tufts, as I said, it's nice. You could probably take a scissors to a few of them because they have this effect where because of some of them are like sideways, you have loads of strands of grass growing down, which they don't. It's called phototropism. Plants grow up towards the light, so just take a scissors and just trim off the bottom bits to make it look less like it's like a pineapple or whatever. Um, Otherwise, it's really good. Um, yeah, I like the way you've got like the different colors worked in. You could probably put a bit of a green or a brown or both wash onto your like high fluorescent tufts because they're very eye catching. They draw a lot of attention down, and just to get them to gel in a little bit more with the other tufts that are around there. And then similarly, just be careful with like say this big bright blue mushroom down at the bottom. Like it's somewhat counterbalanced with like the blue in the bottle, but that's like a much more desaturated, darker blue. Whereas having just like a big solid color always attracts attention down there. So if you were to shade that out, and maybe you could do like add purple to it or just shade it into darker blue, um, just to reduce the kind of visual impact of that sky blue down there. That would stop the eye getting trapped kind of in towards the bottom of the figure. But I think otherwise, like he did a really good job. He's a very, very busy model, and you have to kind of work all these colors in because that's the color scheme he's got going on. And he picked out all of his doodads and knickknacks, and like he almost looks like he's his own little diorama, which is pretty great to be honest with you. So, great work, Stephen. Jim will have a little bit to say before he moves on to the next one.
Yeah, just a little bit. That big mushroom, like that was the first thing I was going to say. Is like I held my thumb up over that while looking at the picture, and it makes such a huge effect on where the attention is going on it. So that's the big thing for me. Either deal with that mushroom in color or just lose it. To be honest, it's having a massive impact. But yeah, I hate to start on a negative. I'm sorry. But yeah, the rest of the model, as Matt said, great riot of color, and you've balanced it very, very well. Other than that big blue mushroom at the bottom, so that's all good. I agree with everything Matt said. That's all great advice. I think the only other maybe nugget I could give is on the metals, maybe just a little bit more shadow contrast, like on the sickle, just to give it a little bit more shade on like the darker sides. That's about it really. The rest of the textures and contrast and travel and stuff is really, really nice. So yeah, thank you, Stephen. It's great work. Thank you very much. Moving up then to Chris Green, who's finished this Ancient Yacht here. Probably the last thing he paints this year, and just wants some feedback. So going to improve skin tones in particular, smooth transitions, And Merry Christmas. Well, same to you. Yeah, I think you did well with the skin tones. They are pretty smooth transitions. I like how you got like the purple and the pink and the red tones, like in joints and veins, nose, around the eyes and stuff. So you got some great tonality going on in the skin. What I think it's could use to improve it though is a little bit more volumetric highlighting. So there is like a travel in it, but they're not always, those highlights aren't really where you'd expect them to see them, if that makes sense. And I don't know if it's just the light as well. It does look like quite a bright light, but it looks very, very desaturated. So watch out for dry brushing desaturates things. It looks like the skin's been slightly dry brushed. So yeah, just a little bit more deliberate with where some of the highlights have been placed. Like on this arm, for example, here it's sort of the same highlight color all the way down this muscle, whereas this bit would be falling into shadow. And it's the same with this section here. Underneath his arm should be darker than the top. So just watch out for those the shapes that the body and the musculature is taking, and just highlight them according to how those shapes work in zenithal light. It looks like it's kind of a straight top down lighting. But yeah, otherwise I really love the tones in the skin. It's like really ruddy and muddy and sort of tanned, which you'd expect from a big dude who's outside chopping off people's heads all the time. Then the next thing I had, which could use a little bit of work, maybe, is differentiating between the rope, the leather, the wood, and the skin. It's all very, very quite samey. So maybe even just like if some of the ropes were coloured, for example, getting some more obviously skin tones, saturation would obviously help as well. But it just looks a little bit samey. Like if you look at it from this angle, so you've got the wood, you've got the rope, you've got the skin, you've got the leathers. They're all very, very close. So just try and differentiate them in tone somehow. That would help. But you have separated everything beautifully, like between the stitches and then rope to skin, even like the graining on the wood barrel, against this black fabric that's on his leg is really, really nicely separated. So that's great. Um, and then, yeah, great work on the base as well, like these micro details of, little bits of moss growing around the sides of the rock, and these tiny little pebbles all picked out deliciously, and these toenail detail as well, really super. So yeah, really great attention to detail on the base. I thought that was very, very cool. And that's all I got really. It was really, really nice otherwise. So yeah, good job. It's just trying to remember that the contrast of hue is just as important as the contrast sort of your light volumes. So yeah, just a little bit more. I mean, this one looks a lot more saturated in this picture, so it's probably just a trick of the light, and yeah, it's probably not not as bad as those photos are making out. It looks a lot more differentiated in this one. So yeah, I hope that helps, Chris. I'll pass you over to Matt now.
Yep, all about them toes. We are. Yeah, this is great. He actually kind of looks like young Santa Claus now that I'm looking at him. Just if you put a hat on him. Definitely agree with Jim. Skin, really nice integration of red, like in his like elbow joints and in his nose and in his toes. It's really, really nice touch. It is. It's quite smooth, but he's a very like rough skin, so it's kind of hard to decide where to draw that line, if you know what I mean. Uh, Photos are very blown out. I don't know if you put like a filter over the bulb you're using. I just use like baking sheet and like tape it to the front, and it acts as a diffuser. It'll help with that. And then you can move the lights out. I like to have the lights like behind my hand when I'm taking the photos, like further away. Um, just because it makes it messes with the contrast. So like the whites get blown out and everything looks kind of darker. So his skin, like I was gonna say, looks kind of like leathery, but like it looks a little bit too brown or similar to the other actual leathers as opposed to being leathery skin. But like that could just be because his head is nice and bright, but then everything else looks relatively darker because of the lights that you have there. It makes it a little bit hard to tell exactly what's going on. The only bit I would add more red to is his ears, because his ears are like very solid skin color, whereas ears it should be the same as his nose and his toes. Is what I'd go for. And yeah, base is really nice. I love the fact that he's like walking across like a bridge. Like he's like like it's like a troll bridge kind of thing, or he's a giant kind of crossing this little bit of scenery with his cart in behind him. And yeah, I think he's a really nice looking giant. So good work all around, and happy New Year to you. John Israel has this Infinity heavy infantry fellow. and trying to get the colors down to be in a jungle at a later date. And how do they work together? How clean and tidy it is, and anything else. All right, cool. Yeah. So I think the colors work fine. Like they work well. Like it's ruddy brown, kind of going up into a yellow, and then you got your cold blues, which is like a nice contrast for that. It's got a kind of, that Infinity has that kind of more pseudo real kind of feel to it. Where you're like, oh yeah, the armor panels are like enameled or like paneled, or they're made of like plastic coated or whatever. So having these kind of brands is a nice touch, but they still have an element of like that high contrast pseudo NMM kind of look to them, which is very good. It's generally quite tidy looking. Again, these are very small models. It's hard to get everything perfect. I'm sure you can tap away at it more before the competition, but it's very readable, if that makes sense. Like there's no bits where I'm looking at it being like, oh, where does this panel end? Where does that thing begin? Like it's very much when you look at it, you know exactly what's going on. So with the green shadows, I'd be careful because green is complementary to red. So that can kind of like muddy things up, especially if you're blending. I'd recommend so you've got a little bit of it going on down in the leg, where it looks like it's a reflected light. Like I'm guessing that's the idea that he's in the jungle and his armor's a bit reflective. So in the shadows, you'll have like a bounce light that's green. So just make sure you have like a separation where it goes to like a black or a very, very dark brown before it goes up to green. And that'll really make your life a bit easier. I think you can probably go heavier on it when you have him on the jungle base. You can have a pretty extreme contrast. If you look at Alexis's like Lance Connect guy with the blue on his sword, you know, your eye will let you away with quite a lot of these reflections as long as they're separated from the main thing. So just watch out for stuff like having it like in his like armpit and stuff, because you're like, well, where would the light be reflecting into his armpit? That's not reflecting all over him. Whereas like on his knee, it kind of makes sense that it's like the main light is hitting him, and then there's a shadow, but then the bounce light coming up from the grass and the foliage is going to be green. And also, like, if you can get that high contrast, fading to black and then back up to green as a bounce light, it's just going to be a really nice look for your competition piece. Yeah. Um, Freehand lines could be a little bit straighter and like more refined. Like maybe use a stencil or just have a lot of pain going through it, because obviously they're going to be stenciled on. They're going to be machine perfect. So you need them to look like that. They don't look completely even with each other. And just be careful as well. Like, it's harder when you're going in between two panels to get them to look exactly right. Like, even if you were doing that on a real gun, like taping that off and spraying it would be a bit tricky. You're always going to get like crookediness. Um, but it's generally, it's made it up to a high standard for the competition. Like just other little bits you can work on, but it's looking really, really solid at this stage so far. So definitely, it's just a case of refining what you have there, and I think you should be pretty happy with it. Jim, do you want to chime in?
Not too much more, to be honest. I think the green again. It's going to look fine when it's on a green base. It looks weird now because it's disjointed, and I kind of to like play the flip side. If he's in the jungle, you could have green stuff like higher up. It's not going to be like an open land like in a meadow. So I kind of buy that the green reflection's a bit higher up on the armor as well. I think that's going to be cool. The only punchback I've got really is the lack of like highlights on the front top of the model. Like if you compare it to his boot down here, this like really high reflection on the armor, you've got nothing anywhere close to that, like on his shoulders or on his head, seemingly from these photos. So just punch up the highlights. I think you'll be golden. To be honest, I mean it's looking really really good. I mean we've seen a lot of these guys from you, and this guy's no exception. Slightly different colours, I grant you, but it's nice and smooth. It's well picked out and separated and stuff. Just take these highlights up a bit further towards the top, man. I think you're golden. He's going to look great. Thank you very much, John. Okay, Duarte now. Struggling with the NMM on the armor, but like an appraisal on the whole thing. So, thankfully, this happened. And the very next submission we had was Alexis Bonner, who's basically given us a masterclass in NMM on armor. So Whatever I say, I think your best advice is just going to be to study work that looks a little bit like this, because you're getting along. It is fair to say. So the sword looks pretty good. I mean, it's a bit blurry in this picture. It's not the best example of it. From here, that is a really nice looking sword. Like, this steel NMM is great. You've got interference colors. You've got nice bright edges. You've got random patterns, and then you've got like little blooms of light in the shadows, tiny micro scratching. You know, it's all there. Everything's great. The armor, like I think it's supposed to be like steel armor on the chest plate and the helm. That's what it looks like. So basically, it's a matter of smoothness and contrast, basically. So it just needs to go a little bit brighter in some places, and with the complicated trilly, I think you're going for gold or like a bronze or something. It's not quite selling which one it is, but basically it's residing mostly in the midtones now. And when you're doing trims and very small details on armor, they're mostly going to be like highlight reflections. So you've got to treat like the shape of it. So everything hit on this section here, all of this would be super bright, and then you've got another bright reflection on the armor here. So all of this would be super bright, and then at the top of the armor here, this would all be highlight. So you've got to try and take it in, rather than try and do every sort of bend and section of the NMM, just treat the entire area. And then, like we've said before, you don't have to go from maximum highlight to deepest shadow on every single piece of this intricate design. You just need to have that travel across the entire, like, the chest or the abdomen. You need to treat those areas sort of as one entity, and then make it a lot quicker for a start, but it'll also sell a lot better as metal as well. Same on the headpiece here. Like, mostly it's mid-tone. It needs to go up to highlight in most cases. So, but you're getting along. Keep going. It's hard as hell to do stuff like this on NMM. So it's a very tricky piece to practice it on. But I think your steel is absolutely brilliant on the sword. Yeah, just smoothness and higher highlights. You could even deepen the shadows on the silver as well a little bit. Interference colors, you know, you've got green up here on the sword, so you could definitely integrate some green in the shadows underneath the arm and underneath this bracer here. That would be cool. I think you've got interference color coming through on the shield, so that's good. So this is looking nice as well, the shield, how you've got the like opposing lights, and they're slightly different sizes to each other. That's really good. I mean, depending on how shiny you want it to be, I mean, shields get banged up quite a lot, and you've gone for like a brushed effect. So, you know, I wouldn't really ding you too hard on the shield. I think that's looking pretty good, pretty damn good. And then texture, I think on the cloak is looking very nice as well. I think that's mostly sculpted, but you've done a good job of sort of picking it out. So that's cool. I'd maybe just have a little bit more highlight on this ridge here, because that is also upward facing. This is deep shadow, that's correct, but it's kind of the same as this fold here, which is facing up. So don't just highlight the ridge of it. The ridge is going to be the brightest highlight, yes, but then either side of these folds, they're going to be sort of your mid-tones, and then the deep shadows is just for the folds facing down. So this one, yes, this one, yes, this one, yes. So that's good for those. And then did I have anything else here? Just a little bit of separation basically between the elements. So where a shirt ends and you've got the skin. Oh, I haven't mentioned the skin. The skin looks really good. So good work on that. I did have that noted, but skipped over it. Yeah, you can maybe just do a little bit more highlight across the T section of the face. So that's kind of down the middle and sort of across the tops of the cheekbones. But you got good detail in the eyes, good color in the hair as well. So that's all nice. And then back to what I was saying about separation. So just deepening lines where some elements end. Some of it's there, and then some places it's missing. So just make sure it's wherever there's a new element starting, you've got to have that deep dark line to separate it out. But it's coming along really nice, Duarte. So I hope that helps you. I'll pass you over to Matt now to finish it off.
Very good. Not a lot to say. Literally said pretty much everything I was going to touch on. So the only thing I can add is it's kind of tunic. The color composition is great because it's like basically blue and orange, which are like real classic complementary colors.
Slam dunk.
And yeah, his tunic, you know, I get that it's like this pale kind of fabric, but it doesn't really have any travel in it. Like if you look at the top of his shoulder and like under his armpit are almost the exact same color, which is weird. Like look at the inside of my hood, it's like a pale fabric, but there's a lot of like range to it. And similarly on like the lower bits where it's flaring in. And then in addition to doing like the T-zone on the face, you could think of the T-zone on the helmet as well, like having a stripe running down here and then across the top of his like jaw covery things, and that'll draw more attention into the face. But yeah, like Jim said, it's very tricky doing a big filigree piece of metal like this, especially in a bust. You want to either like really like individual bits of it look metallic, but you kind of want to consider the whole thing. So you could either pump up a lot of the highlights in kind of the side that's facing the sun to make that relatively brighter, or just have the side that's facing the ground be overall darker. I think it's actually quite good, and it wouldn't take a lot to like kick it up to like a really really high level. So fair play. Thanks for submitting, Duarte. And we'll move on up to Alexis Bonaire, some kind of lands connect. Put a lot of effort into the NMM. Shows. I want to get feedback specifically about that. Yeah, sure. Well, I'll do a little bit of general feedback, I think, as well. What did I have to say? Okay, so the reflections on the sword blade are really, really great. Um, like I love the kind of like the light to dark and the flambergy bits, and the way you've got that blue from the pants being reflected off it, and it's brighter when it's near to the trousers and darker when it's further away. So I think that's really, really strong. Um, some of the bit nearest the cross guard looks like the least metallic, if that makes sense. It doesn't have like above the top curl the scroll. There's like no real like contrast up there apart from in the little grooves. But like overall, it works like really well. You could just have a little sliver, like a triangle, where the cross guard is casting a shadow there, and I think that'd sort that out for you. Um, the skulls, the gold metal looks really, really good on the skulls and on the pommel of the sword and on the like middle bit of the grip, like where that'll be between your hands. It's very, very convincing. I really like it. It's not as convincing on the crossguard. You've got these kind of like flat panels. I don't know if you use a different recipe or if it's like the shape that was kind of annoying you about it. Um, but it's just not like reading as much as gold. I think probably you want to have more edge highlights running along because it's like a square cross section. So you want to have an edge highlight running along the top that like bridges over the midtone and the shadow as well, if that makes sense. And you could, if you wanted to, make it like asymmetrical because at the moment both of the sides of the crossguard are kind of highlighted in the middle, whereas you can make one of them more bright on one end and the other one more dark, if that makes sense. Um, so the armor, obviously, this is a very, very complicated guy. Like breastplates are really convoluted shapes, and he's got all these different panels, and then he's got the stuff that's like layered on top of it. So take all this with a pinch of salt. It's very open to interpretation as well. Like a guy in a suit of armor, if he turns like this much, like the way it's going to reflect everything is going to change completely. Um, so the kind of like arm part looks very much like it's lit like directly from overhead to me, and but then his breastplate looks somewhat more like it's being lit from the front, if that makes sense, because the shadows migrate into here where it's like perpendicular, like straight out. And then the I don't think that's like a huge problem. I think you can get away with that perfectly fine. But just bear it in mind. And again, sort of on the lower areas of the armor, it's not always telling kind of like the exact same story. Like say for example, on his right leg, you kind of got I think that would all be really shadow pretty much, and then a couple of edge highlights. You have it kind of traveling up towards silver near his groin, but like that whole panel's facing over there, like it's going that way. So if the light's coming from this side, I mean, you could do a very fine little edge highlight on it to show it's like catching something, but um, you know, just that's a very small detail to be picking on. Anyway, the his like elbow guard thing on his left elbow again with the gold. I think you could have more contrast in it. There's this like heart-shaped part. They have a name. They're like to protect your like middle of your elbow. But it seems like one of them would be like really, really bright because it's facing like 45 degrees like upwards, and the other one would be really, really dark because it's facing down. And then if you wanted to be real sexy about it, you could have like the reflected light from the bottom one coming up onto the top one, which would be really nice. And then on the actual elbow part here, again, it doesn't look like there's enough difference between like you have a part that's 45 degrees up and a part that's 45 degrees down, but like they're similar-ish in terms of their lighting. But that's kind of hard to judge from just this forward photo. I think like the top of the arm looks absolutely great. The uh, bottom arm, like the forearm section, can you actually see what I'm doing? No, this section here. Uh, you're kind of missing a little bit, like the shadow should curve in because it's got the kind of hourglass shape to it. It's not just a cylinder, so like it should be like broad and then it like goes up and then goes out again to follow the line of the way the metal would be made because it's going to be wider near his wrist, so you can like move your wrist around. And then I like the way you have different gold on the sword. Uh, like I like how it's different from like the other kind of gold around the place. But I'm not sure like it doesn't read as well, especially if you, the part like the cross guard here and the kind of bit of the scabbard that's near the cross guard. You know, it's a lot of small details in a little area. I'm kind of wondering like, would you be better off just doing them a little bit differently just to save yourself the hassle? Because like there's no particular reason they'd have to be gold. They could be something a little bit different. If you chose for them to be, it looks good, but it's not like as good as like the pommel up the top, or like the skulls is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I do like the leg armor, especially like the way it's kind of like drawn a little bit of attention down there, and it creates a line up to the middle. And then that's pretty much everything. Yeah, like it's a real showcase of the amount of effort you put in, the amount of skill that's required for all of these things. It's there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different facets of it, and depending on how you tackle one area, it can affect our perception of other ones. But I think it's in a really good place, and I think you could, uh, again, like not too much work to just like dial in a couple of little areas, just to touch it up like a tiny bit to take it up to that final like chef's kiss, as we say, because it's almost, I'm not going to say perfect, but it's almost perfect. Jim?
Yeah, I love it, Alexis. Stunning again. Thank you for sharing. Um, I agree with all of the things. I think how you've done the blue and the black and the red parts of his armor is absolutely delicious. Like the level of detail in the travel, and even just like where you've placed the colors. Like I'm not sure if it's deliberate, like how you've got on his cod piece, you've alternated it very deliberately with the pant leg. You got the blue on this side, and they went, okay, so we'll pose that. We'll have black on this side, and the blue will be on that side. So you made this like tiny little cross checkered effect down there. I just thought that was a really, really nice touch. It would have been quite an easy mistake to get that the wrong way round or just make that all black or whatever. But that was a really, really great touch, that was. Stunning attention to detail, separation, textures, reflections, all beautiful. Matt mentioned about having a reflection in this section, make this brighter and make this one dark and put reflection in. I think the same could be said for inside this brooch that's on his chest. So the light is coming down and catching very, very highly off there. That would definitely light the inside of this thing up a little bit. So a very, very soft secondary highlight in there would be good. Same thing here. That would be awesome. But for the most part, I think the armor is an absolute triumph. It's gorgeous, really, really brilliant. I think the only thing, maybe if you wanted to, you could give it like a sky earth kind of reflection, because it's kind of got kind of a tealy green tinge to it, which it sells as metal, absolutely. But we've got interference colors on the steel from down here, so you could quite easily integrate some browns in the shadows low down, and then put some blues like in the mid tones of the stuff facing up. Maybe, I'm sure you know how to do sky earth metallics. You certainly got the skill set for it. So that was the only other thing, really. I mean, it just fantastic. Oh, with the cross guard, to me that was selling as a different metal deliberately, something like brass. But I don't know. if that was supposed to be, then brilliant. If you do want them to match, then yeah, you've got to work the hue of this to match the rest of the gold. But to be honest, I thought it was deliberate because I don't see why he's in very functional, like realistic battle armor from those times. So I don't think they would put gold on the crossguard because it's pretty soft metal and doesn't actually offer that much protection. Whereas something, brassy would be a lot harder and more functional. So, but whatever, just thoughts. Though not really great constructive feedback there. Yeah, stunning work. He could definitely win competitions with this sort of work. So, amazing. Thank you very, very, very much for sharing that. Very nice. Okay, moving up to Sasha, working on some big knights, a lot of free hands. Yes, a lot of free hands, and they're very, very cool. Very tidy, fills the space out nicely. You've got good contrast in it. I honestly thought that was sculpted detail. So if you free-handed that the shape of this thing is absolutely epic. This green gem thing. I'm not familiar with these knights. I've not done one, but that looks so good. There is an opportunity for something going on with this plate down here. Whether it's just some text or some logo symbol, some sort of markation or livery got to be going on. Oh, excuse me. While we're talking about the shield as well, just defining the rivets a little bit better, I think would be helpful because they're not very well separated at the moment. I'll come back to that in a second because I wanted to talk about the weathering on them. So it's cool to weather big, heavy machines, but the thing is with knights, and I think these are loyalist knights. I'm not too sure about that one actually. That might be heretical. That one. I'm not sure. But basically, if they're loyalist knights, then they shouldn't really have any corrosion or rust on them because they're honored noble houses and they're very, very highly revered and honored. So when they come back from a battle, they get fixed no matter how minor the damage. So there shouldn't be any like corrosion or rust and stuff building up on them. You can do them obviously in the heat of the battle and it's taking bullets and bing bang dents and scratches. That's absolutely fine. But you wouldn't expect to see this like corrosion that's building up around the nuts and like the oiliness of parts that are not oiled. Do you see what I mean? There would be oils, obviously, in moving pistons and rams and stuff like that. But just watch out for it, like a general grubbiness on them if it is a loyalist knight. I mean, this guy, I think, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm not sure, but if they're heretic ones, then obviously you can get away with it because they're filthy warp-spawn bastards, and you can make them as dirty as you like. Marble looks awesome. I love the color scheme with the gold and the purple. That looks really, really cool. Oh yeah, so going back to my rivets, just like define them with shadow and highlight, not with a load of corrosion necessarily. But yeah, for big, chunky, stompy boys, they're looking really, really good. Great attention to detail. The weathering has been done nicely as well. Like the way these checker plates are all perfectly crisp and straight. You've got the scratches going on. You've got the dust coming up from the feet. Obviously, dust on the feet is obviously fine as well because that's imminently happened. So yeah, great work with the transfers as well as the free hands. It's all very tidy. They're settled down nicely. I think they're transfers. If not, then take that as highest compliment ever because they look like transfers on the top there. So yeah, a lot of great work has happened with these, and you should be proud. They're very, very cool. I think the molten weapon, just one thing, just refine that a little bit. You could just make it a little bit hotter in some places. Just like with yellow white, like a dawn yellow or something, or ice yellow. It's a good one. Just make it a little bit hotter in some places. That would be cool. But yeah, great work on the knights, man. They look awesome. Matt.
Yeah, I totally agree. Freehand really like helps kind of like fill up those big panels, make it interesting, and it's like heraldry, which is kind of what they're about as well. The stencils and decals and all that jazz are very, very well applied, look really nice. The way you've got these kind of panels, alternating yellow and red panels are cool. And a little bit of stuff like scratching and cuts and bullet holes and stuff going through it. Also, great way of adding visual interest to what is otherwise, big flat panel. On the shield, looks great. Love it. I think it would look really cool if you're going for weathering. Like it's got like some little bullet holes in the bottom, but there's like some scratches in the like. If you zoom in, I don't know if people are going to zoom in real life, but anyway, you can kind of see some scratching going through the lettering down the bottom, and you're like, why would they have repainted that, but not like fix the scratches? I think it'd be cool to have like a real big tear going through it to show like, oh, this is painted on, you know, and you can be tactical about that because you know one of the trickiest things about freehands is getting them symmetrical. Yeah, I think yours has a kind of a cool, like sort of like wiggly asymmetry to it that looks like intentional, and I like it. Like it's like the image is actually rotated slightly, relative to the way the person painted it. But like stuff like, for example, if we look really closely in it, like the head, the skull in the middle, or like the way the lettering, you got your kerning isn't quite exactly right. The exterminatus, the E and the X are way smaller, and it kind of runs out. But if you had like a tear like going straight through all that, that just completely breaks it up and it makes your eye way less capable of like judging is it symmetrical? Because like if there's a rent going like diagonally through it, you're like, I don't know, maybe on one side it's the same as the other side, I don't know. So it's just like a cheeky little like trick for making your freehands look better by making them look worse in universe. If that makes sense. It's still freehand. Like you're freehanding on, it's more freehand. You're freehanding on like weathering and damage over freehand, which is like freehand squared, which is even better. But yeah, really, really great looking big old robots. So I hope you're very happy with them, and best of luck in the new year. Okay, Mark Tan, we've got more yellow, green, gemmy looking things. Very good. It's like a theme. The feedback prep not great. There could be gaps. Okay, I mean fill gaps. That's it. You know, if you know they're there, they're there. Fill them up. You can fill them up halfway through painting and everything. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Um, and what you can improve turns the paint job. So this is a very simple kind of guy. He's not got a lot going on, and what is there is done very well. So that's nice. He looks delighted with himself, which I like. He's got this like big old grin, and he just looks like he's living his best life, which is a good look for Nurgle. The palette you've used, very nice. I like it's not a lot of colors, but they're nice kind of contrast with each other, and they're nicely balanced, and it all just looks generally very good. The blood effects are also very good and horrible looking. So I think that's a nice add. They're nice and wet and gross and drippy, which is what you want. His trousers, he's wearing combats. I like that. They're like functional. He's got extra pockets and stuff. They're very weathered in the bottom, but not like up on his thighs. You're like, well, what's he doing with those big bloody fingers? Like he's not definitely wiping them on his pants there, yeah. So like, he's even got like a hole there, and you're like, why would you have a hole? But like the pocket underneath it is like perfectly pristine, like he just took it off the shelf in a shop. So you could have a little bit more there. Like maybe he's got an old sandwich in that pocket and it's like leaking out the bottom or something. Just to kind of make it more in keeping with the rest of the kind of piece overall. The kind of horrible pustules or boobobes or like blisters he's got are like really good. They're like super glossy and gross. Like they're full of like fluorescent pus, which is nice. They do look a bit like gems though, like as in you painted them exactly like gems. So it might be nice to have, to show that it's like a I mean, I think we all know like it's a big gob full of goo, like in Gremlins. But if you had a little bit of this green stuff leaking out the bottom of them to show that like, oh, it's a liquid that's flowing through and it's like a thin membrane over top, I think that would just like kick it up another notch. Now looking at his belly too much, it looks like the two blisters in his belly button are like a happy face. Sorry, that's just a random comment. I like it. I like this guy a lot. It's very simple, and what's there is very well executed. So good work, Jim.
Yeah, I thought for the gems as well. Don't take it to black because it is. I said the gems, the pustules. Don't take them to black. That will help them reading as gems because, as Matt said, they are painted perfectly like gems. So yeah, just don't go to black, and I think you'll be golden. The rest of it should be fine. Yeah, really cool. Disgusting. Bleh. I think you could probably flick some blood at the pants because his arms aren't terribly long and compared to him. So whatever he's just messed up with those hands would probably have splattered on his pants. So a bit of a blood splattering down there, blood for the blood god and all that. And then
Maybe it's
really,
jam. Maybe he's eating a big pot of jam, but he just got his
he
hands in there.
he definitely would have
Somewhere
spilled
in
some
his
jam
mouth.
and jam dribbling from the chin. Yes, lovely. Um, just volumetric highlighting on the skin, really. Just a little bit brighter on the tops of things. So on top of his moobs, bit more across the top of the belly, tops of the arms. Yeah, gap filling. If you don't know this trick, use gloss varnish to fill small gaps. You don't need to use milliput and green stuff and all that noise. If it's a small gap, just do like slap, 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 slap of gloss varnish and let it dry between each one. It'll fill it right up for you. Then you can paint straight on it. Nice little trick. But yeah, on his back, you could probably pick out some globule pustules a little bit as well. Yellows, reds, greens maybe. But like detail on the pants is really, really good. The base is cool as well. How you've done that with this slimy tentacle thing and this noxious fluid. All very, very nice. Yeah, the only other thing I've just noticed as well, his teeth are immaculately white, and I very much doubt he's been to see the dentist in the last couple of millennia. So perhaps a dirtier, like plaque build up on the teeth. Don't ever paint them like straight white. You want to be the bone color, and then bring that right down with some washes, sepia, agrax, something like that. Really dirty them babies up. And yeah, what a smile. What a smile. Nice work, Mark. Thank you very much. Hope that helps. Okay, Big Monk's back with something more familiar now. Hope you did well in the competition. So gone for a brighter NMM this time and tried to do secondary reflections on the barrel of the gun. Trying to improve on doing red. Red is tricky. Trying to do the rosy pink parts of the skin, and then try to do textures, leather, cloth, and wood parts. So how to improve some more. Black lining not that clean. I think this looked beautifully clean. The black lining. These are very, very sharp small tings. I'm not sure how big that base is, but even if that was a 40mm base, that's a bloody small line. So don't beat yourself up about the black lining, dude. I think that looks very, very nice. Lovely integration of the skin colours into the face now. Really, really like that. And you've got travel in it as well, which is awesome. It's kind of hard to do like texture when you're doing this kind of Borderlands style, but I think you've done a great job on like the leather satchel. There's not so much going on with the gloves. I'm not sure if that's deliberate, but I don't think you necessarily need it. It differentiates that is a smoother texture than that, so I think it's fine, to be honest. Barrel of gun, yeah, I see the reflections on that. That's cool. What you could maybe do to improve that though is this secondary reflection here is integrate some red on the lower side of that. So where you've got like between this secondary highlight here and then like the deep shadow color. So between the grey and the black there, have a very thin band of red. That's getting weaker as it gets down here obviously, and the same for the yellow. You could maybe incorporate some yellow as a bounce light into the barrel there. Just you getting that color interaction between those two materials that are so close to each other. But the barrel of the gun looks really good. That's where we'd expect them to be. You could maybe push them a little bit higher. I get you don't want to take too much attention away from her, but if it's a pristinely shiny polished gun, and I don't see why these guys wouldn't polish their gun. Look at them, they're having a great time with that gun. So yeah, red. I think the red is good. It's got some nice travel in it. It is a hard color. I'm sure you know how to do it, but I think this is absolutely fine for this application. You've not got anything particularly like shiny. It's just a very matte kind of surface but it's a bunch of mushrooms, isn't it? And they're not highly reflective or highly textured in any way. So the soft contrast that you've got here, it looks like you've kind of got like a blue or a purplish tone as a shadow, and it's very soft contrast, but it's there, and I think it's good, man. I think it's the red looks great on these. The yellow I think is a little bit flatter. It's kind of tricky one. Use pink to undershade, like a dark pink. If you don't know that one already, it just works. I can't even explain why, but it looks amazing on yellow. What else? Yeah, the texture on the fabrics, the wood is what I need to speak about. It's gorgeous. Oh, where have you gone? Yeah, that the texture on the wood is a blinding success. That looks really, really, really good. It kind of looks like almost too realistic for this style, but I wouldn't go changing it. It looks great. So yeah, great stuff all around. I haven't really given much like pushback. It's really, really good, really, really good model. So yeah, awesome stuff, Big Mag. Really, really nice. Thank you very much, Matt.
Yeah, I'll just be horrible. So it's they'll leave things out.
Balance is
I also
key.
may have zoned out there for a minute, so apologies if I repeat anything Jim said. Really, really nice piece. It's like amazing how you're using all kind of similar techniques, but it looks like a completely different style because the figure is so different, and it's not as sort of grungy and mechanical. It looks like a storybook character because obviously they use black lining for that too. So yeah, she's really really nice. The red, as Jim said, is nice. It's just got a really nice finish to it, which I think is doing a lot of work for you. You can kind of see, it has natural shadows and very slight kind of like glossiness to it, which the yellow just doesn't have. It's a much more kind of flat color that you've used, flat paint. So if you were to add in a little bit more of your own shading, or just be aware of that. As Jim said, the black lining, I think it's nice and tight and skinny overall in general. There's a few places it just looks a little bit either sort of excessive or it's not too fine. It's sort of untidy. Like beside the little mushroom guy in the front, like his right eye, there's like a line above his head, but then there's like an extra little bit there that you could easily just pare back. And the same on like the gap in her leg. It looks like you got like an extra crease that's very near to the other one. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. You have like some like extra creases that are very near to like another black line. It ends up looking like it's an area, if that makes sense. So I would just reclaim that with the white or the off white on the mushroom boy's face, and then you could do a little bit of green on her thigh. I think that's not a big deal. Inside of his mouth, again, you could kind of go back in and just clear up, just to make it very obvious, like this is the area that's mouth color, and then the gun looks very, very good. The only thing that I would say about the gun in terms of improving is the actual muzzle. Like if you look at it right from the front, inside the barrel has this lovely like inverted cone kind of look to it, but then there's like a ring around it that's light, and then a ring around it that's dark. The dark one I think is fairly believable. We can just think of that's a section out of a panel. It's not facing the light, so it's all just one color. Whereas the other one looks quite domed, so it seems like it would probably have the opposite reflections of the cone that's inside, if that makes sense. So where the inside of the barrel is dark at the top, the kind of like bit on the outside would be bright, and then down the bottom it would be dark. But yeah, that's like a teeny tiny little section of it. Oh, and you might, I don't know how big the model is. Obviously, I'd say it's not huge. But the next step up would be to do some shading on the eyes. You might have a little tiny bit in there. The eyes are very well done, but just when you have a really big expressive eye like that, you can do it like a gem where you have like, dark blue, it goes to light blue, or you can do it the other way around. Look up how they do shading in anime, like anime or manga eyes. Like they have really nice, like put a gradient through it, and you do this, that, and the other. And it's just like kicks it up a little bit more. And yeah, it looks like you have kind of like a gradient, like from the outside to the inside. But you could exaggerate it a little bit more and have it from the top to the bottom. But yeah, really, really lovely piece. I don't know what it's for, but I think you should be very, very happy with it. Next up, we've got two robots, Rob Clark, two more. I don't know if these are the same dudes. They're some sort of knight. But yeah, really cool. They really just make me think of like Optimus Prime when I see them with the like big robot face and it's red and blue. So really, really nice. I love the super gloss finish you've got on like the all of it. The fact that it's like the same kind of finish, even though it's different colors, that can be kind of hard to achieve. And I think it's just a really good look. Like it looks like, it's enameled steel panels, and the bright blue. You wouldn't often see the bright blue with the red, and I think it's a really, really nice look. So good job. I love that like lion rampant he's got on his like little shield. It looks great, and then the transfers down on the like bannery things. They also look amazing. Uh, then just sort of little bits you might want to look into are so the arm. I like the way you've got a different kind of his elbow of his like spear arm. It's a much darker red, but it's also a very, very different finish. It looks like it might be like a speed paint or some kind of wash or something, but it doesn't have, it's not in any way glossy, and it's not as smooth. Um, so it might be nice. Like it's nice to have the difference that it looks like it's a very different kind of metal than the others. But in some places it looks like it's just not very metal-y, if that makes sense. So you could either do a little bit of edge highlighting or just go back, brighten up some of like the bits that are facing up, and then do your red back over it to get that back, or try and figure out a way where you can somewhat match the finish, like if it was like a semi-gloss finish on this, because you're like it's a working part, so it's not as shiny as the others. Because at the moment it's just yeah, I don't know. That's like a for your own just choice if you want. Similarly, the blue glow inside the lance thing could be stronger. You could probably want to have some dark blue in there to make the light blue look different. You could also maybe have some of the blue in these little like lines that run down the lance. I'm guessing those are like some sort of like gearing system, but you know, it could be like the power flows up through there and just to have it kind of like bleed out to here. And then I'd say uh, probably the main thing is in the back and on the legs, just to break up the areas of solid steel a little bit more. Like you've done a lot, you've done a really good job with these kind of like brass panels, and you've got these shades and little nooks and crannies. But like it's still a huge area of basically silver. So like for example, these kind of springy things that are inside of his hip joint, like I could see them being much darker because they're like a moving part, maybe oiled up and then get wear on them and stuff. And like those cables that are hanging down under his bum, like those could be like a different material. It's not steel. Like steel kind of cables don't really make a huge amount of sense anyway. They'd be like wrapped in something. But yeah, you've done a really good job. But just think about, you know, for especially for like around that hip joint, we have really big areas of just like steel to take up another kind of layer of like make one of them dark steel and one of them light steel or whatever. And but yeah, I think it's a really nice looking scheme. It's very like it's obvious you know what you're going for, and you've achieved it really well. Really clean, like cleanliness would be a big issue on this thing. Nothing really jumped out at me like trying to get those like perfect like I don't know if you masked it or what to just have it go perfectly from the red to the gold to the blue. And I think it looks very nice altogether. Jim, what's your opinion?
Yeah, knights are a challenge, aren't they? And you've done a great job. He looks pretty damn sweet, man. Nice and clean. Like I was saying in the last night, you can't have them too corroded and stuff if they're loyal. So nice clean night. That's what we like to see. Awesome work. I love how the reds come out, but you said in your little description thing that you were trying to be a bit more deliberate with the light or something. So consider the direction of the light and tie this to the race. So if you're considering the direction of the light, you can't use gloss finish because it just obliterates all of that work instantly. So yes, don't do that. You have to use if you're going to paint directionality of light like really deliberately, you have to use matte paint. You've got to get rid of all reflections. So that doesn't mean to say that this now looks bad, because it doesn't. It looks cool. It looks like a candy red, pristine, shiny night, and that's absolutely awesome. But I'm just saying, it doesn't come across. Any work that you've done for the directionality of light is not really coming across. Certainly in these pictures, might be different in your hand, but the only reflections and shadows we see are coming from the gloss varnish that's been applied. So just an FYI, really. It's not right or wrong. It's just an FYI. You can't have both in this instance. I agree with Matt. Try and bust up this silver bit, even if it's just different types of silver, like gunmetal, jet exhaust, proper silver, lead belcher. There's lots of different shades of silver, but you've seemingly just used the same one. So, but even then, you don't have to go slapping loads of dirty wash on it to differentiate it. Just use different silvers if you've got them. That would probably help. And then I thought the gold could use some shadows bullying into it. It's all quite sort of solid in tone across the whole thing. So yeah, just edge highlighting with some silver added in, like glazing some shadows down with like browns mixed in with the gold color, stuff like that, just to break it up a bit and just add that little bit of contrast to it. But on the whole, yeah, awesome looking night. A lot of work got into it, and you can tell. So yeah, lovely stuff. Thank you, Rob. Let's see some more. Moving on to Lucas. So just feedback on the bus. Tried to push myself. So plan to enter into competition. Ooh, brutal feedback coming then. Judge it as a competition piece. So the things that would stand out would be love the shadow effects on the face straight away. Like the main focus is definitely on the face because it's got a great level of contrast. It's very, very smoothly blended, and you've got these deliberate, I think, cast shadows painted on, which is awesome. You definitely need to have that for a bust. So the face is really, really strong point. I love the color of the eyes as well. Straight away, that's engaging because we don't see red eyes in reality. So straight away, oh, my eyes are in his immediately. So 10 out of 10 for drawing the attention to the face. Where we fall down a little bit though is in the gold armor. So some parts of it are really, really great. Like the brooches that are on top of the chest, like the way those reflections are behaving is really, really good. I'm not sure about the shadow color. It's kind of this kind of like grey, green, washed out sort of color. So I think you need a bit more saturation in the shadows, but like where the shadows are and where the highlights are and how they're reacting with each other is like really, really strong. I'm just not quite so sure. You've got these like shades of grey which are kind of in the shadows. So I can't help feeling what those would be like if they were a bit more involved with hue, if that makes sense. But like where they're going, where all the highlights and shadows are, is correct. I'd say for this. Then the other big challenge I think what we got here is this massive area of shadow on like the gold front plate. So this needs to have some level of interaction with light around it somehow. So over here, it's very, very sorry, this bit down here, you've got a massive interaction. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be black or silver, this piece. This sort of black V shape across the chest, but that's having a very strong interference color dealt with it. So this needs to have some sort of secondary reflection going down here as well. This is all very, very boring compared to the rest of it. Look at the level of highlights we've got here on this gold piece and in the brooches, as already said. So this is a huge area of the front of the model, and it's just blank, basically. So you must revisit this before this goes to competition. It doesn't matter reason because it's light behaves randomly. So as long as you've got some travel from light to dark and it's deliberate and it sort of reflects something around it, then I think you're absolutely golden. It doesn't, don't worry too much. I'd probably start bringing a highlight down towards this edge if it was me. So you've got like bands of highlight going across it. The hair looks really, really good. You could maybe just punch the highlights a tiny little bit on some ridges. It looks better in this picture, but from this picture, it looks a little bit flat, the hair. So make sure you're picking out individual strands as well. When you go to competition, you'll almost certainly get dinged for that. It looks a bit like The Witcher, I'm just realising. Henry Cavill's Witcher. Next thing is the purple. I think you did a good job with texturing the wool. It's a little bit like it's a little bit loose sometimes, the texture. I mean, it sells for what it is, but it doesn't sell as like a very deliberate fabric. And you know, depending on what competition you're going to, you might need to be a lot more deliberate with the texturing on this. I like the colors. I like where you've put the highlights, and like the general transition of color is good. I just think you need to be a little bit more deliberate with the texture of it if you're going to go with texture. It's better here in the front than it is on the back. I know it's the back of the model, blah, but it's competition, and there might be somebody who's done the exact same model as you in the exact same way, but they spend more time on the back, and therefore they win. So you've always got to take it, way past your mental ability to deal with the model anymore if you go into competition, especially with busts. So did I have anything else? Just a little bit more color around the eyes. So I think I was trying to say like getting some blue tones in like the bags under your eyes. So there is some transition of color going on there. It just looks like it might. Yeah, this is a good shot. So just a little bit more like bluiness that you get in the bags under the eyes. I think that's what I meant by that, because I think there's good colour in the rest of it. Could maybe have a little bit more rosiness in the cheek, maybe, but you know, first thing I was attracted to when seeing this was the face. So yeah. Other than that, yeah, awesome stuff. So good luck in the competition. Let us know how you get on. Over to you, Matt.
Yep, really good. Face, absolutely best part by country mile. Uh, Cast shadows look amazing. Love the kind of desaturated skin tone that still has some life in it. And like the high kind of glossy sheen to it. He's just a very handsome looking man. I'd give it like a 9.75 out of 10. The only thing I think that could like again, if this wasn't if you didn't say competition, I wouldn't even think about saying this. The like light reflection in his right eye looks either bigger or more or more centered than in the left eye. Left eye looks amazing. I love the fact that it's like you actually have the highlight on the eye in the shadow area, like because it's an orb, so it could do that. And then the kind of like rim light on the face looks amazing in the front view, but if we flip around to his kind of shadow side, it still looks very good, and that's very hard to pull off. Like even your phone camera, like contrasts, auto contrast can mess up with that. But I think the first you've got kind of like two rim lights, one that's like under his cheekbone and then goes down in front, and then you have another one that's like here, and I'm like, what structure is that like goes here? Like, there's no reason to be a light like it's like he's got this like jowl kind of thing. I'd look at maybe moving that to like the underneath of the jawline, if that makes sense. It looks or and have a look, is it even necessary sort of from the front view? You know, could it just be more of a kind of like a broader lower light, if that makes sense? But yeah, face is like fucking stunning, to be honest with it. Hair, as Jim said, looks good, but doesn't look anything like as refined as the face. Like especially like on the right side of his head, looks like there's like wash that's pooled in there. Just like the strands aren't pulled out. It's not like doesn't have any like extreme glossiness to it like his skin has. Like he's gonna condition this hair. He's a pretty boy. You could push that up a notch. The freehand and or pattern on his hood is really great. Agree with Jim that the armor is a little bit confusing because you kind of got there's gold, but then you've also got steel, but it looks like the steel has yellow light all over it, whereas he's not under a yellow light. And in some places, it kind of works as like, oh, it's interference from the gold around it, but in other places, it's like, why? So like, especially I would say on his shoulder pads, like those could be like if you made those like white, like they're enameled, or if you made them like be a darker steel, you wouldn't have to worry so much about like trying to get interest through all this texture. Uh, in order to differentiate it from the other bits. It would just look different. And then it'll even look nice with his white hair and he has two white shoulder pads. That's just my opinion. Similarly, like Jim said, on the body, like there's really nice. Like I like that you have some yellow in the armor, but just like make sure it's clear which bits are actually gold and which bits are actually steel. The gold itself is really rich and like it's kind of like fake gold looking. Like if you had like costume jewelry, which I think is fine. He's like a fantasy character. Like it's very yellowy kind of gold, but I like that. I like this. The gem looks also very good. I like the way you have this like cast light through it. But I would argue if this is for a competition that a gem like refracts light through it, so it wouldn't just like be this little circle that's like on the metal. It should be like an oval that's coming out of it. Like think of how that would actually when the light passes through it, it's going to cast kind of a shadow, and then it's going to have an actual like red light that is transmitted through, and then take it up that extra notch, just that extra little detail. I guess Jim said that someone else didn't put in there. And yeah, the back again, lowest priority obviously for these kind of things. But if it's for a competition, having a big old cloak like this is a nice place to put freehand to make it look interesting. Like you could either have a big cross, like, or an anchor, something that runs down, follows the shape of the model, or you could take the same kind of like spider webby pattern that you have on his hood and then like do a section of it down the bottom or like in the middle or somewhere just to have something to look at. And again, that will help you deal with the kind of issue of trying to make a purple wool cloak look interesting for all this texture. But if you just gave us something else to look at, does that make sense? Really, really, really lovely work. By the way, it's beautiful, especially in the face. You know, I'd give him a kiss if he was here right now. Next up, we got John Adams, another handsome man with a stern stare. This one wearing a helmet though, because he's got sense. Least happy with the black armor, going for a slight NMO effect. Try to use chromatic black. Cool. But then does it look too much like blue? Yeah, look up Travarian, Troviaorion, had this exact problem. He did you know, like Marines in like a more interesting style, and he did a dark Black Templar, and people were like, "Oh, it looks like a dirty Ultramarine." If you hadn't said it to me, like I just was like, "Yeah, he's a Black Templar. Like he's obviously wearing black." Um, I think like the huge amount of contrast with the red and stuff kind of helps. But if you hadn't said it to me, now that you have said it to me, I'm like, oh, it does look a bit like it's like Night Lord's blue or whatever. So the way you would deal with that is the back is obviously black, yeah, because you've got big sections that are just actually black. Whereas in the front, you've only kind of got real black kind of on his right arm in his armpit area. And that's it. Nothing else. Like the sides of his boots should definitely go to black, like because it's black. They're not blue. Yeah. So the mid tone is black. Yeah. You can have like the mid tone highlight be blue, and then have like a neutral actual highlight on top of that. But just the amount of area that's black could definitely be more in the front view just to deal with that whole issue. Yeah. And then there'd be no ambiguity in there. Like it's entirely, yeah. A lot of this, like it could be black and it's reflecting blue, but like especially like in his right leg where it's like tucked away in there, like why is that? If that is lit that blue, then his robes would be blue as well. Yeah, because they're white and white takes light quite strongly as well, even if it's not glossy. Um, but having said that, you know, I think it's fractional, like 20% more black in here, which would be easy to do because you're just painting it matte black, and then you know you'd be jobs good on that. Blah blah blah. Oh yeah, and also like the his little team of helpers, they have like these kind of blue jeans that they're wearing, and that's kind of similar in town to him, which helps tie it in. But those are presumably meant to be blue, which adds a little bit of an element of kind of visual confusion. If they're wearing blue trousers, but he's wearing black armor that is has the same tones in it, yeah, we could start thinking, oh, maybe they're all in blue. Cloak looks really strong. I love he's got this like Order of Malta, like I was in Malta, and like the knights. This is like heraldry that the Knights of Malta actually like wore, and they wore these colors as well. And I think it just looks really, really, really good. And that big like cross in the back, and you've got like the highlights and the shadows playing beautifully across it, and the way is it's like aged and looks kind of like parchment as well. It's got this lovely like techno historical feel to it. Um, the blood on his swordy guy looks a bit like, well, so the way you've done this, I did a great course at Adepticon. A lovely woman ran it. I'd love to actually know her name. Um, but she was talking about, you know, you got to think about it like blood splatter analysis, like CSI kind of stuff. If there was like a puddle of blood under his sword, that would happen if his sword was bleeding. Yeah, but it's not. Like it looks like the sword generated this blood to pool there. Like that should be like the sword, like when he put it down, blood like slapped off it, and it would create like a drip that goes kind of straight down, or like even just like this pool, and then it drips down more. Um, that looks a bit more like as well, like you get it like transfer of blood, like if you like touched your sword, like if you press the sword into the ground, like the flat of the sword, you'd get that kind of blood transfer going on, but it wouldn't like there's no reason why you do that. So I think it should be more like in a thin straight line because it'll all come down the tip and then like kind of run down from there. And yeah, I really like his eyes. He's got this kind of like Superman, superhero kind of like gaze. It's very strong and intense, and like he's almost got this like stern expression, even though he's wearing a full face helmet. So I think he did a really good job on that. Hopefully that was have helped you, John. And I'll pass you over to Jim.
Oh, I think it looks awesome as it is. Um, Most people know that that's Helbrecht and he's a Black Templar, and you'll probably get away with it. Um, But yeah, for black, if you really wanted to change it, then yeah, you can use any color to highlight black. It really doesn't matter as long as 50% of each surface is black. It will still sell as black. So that's where this has fallen down. Really, is you've got maybe 10% is black. So more black glazing into the shadows, and you'll be right as rain. It looks great. Smooth transitions, beautifully well separated. Attention to detail across the servitors. I like how you took the orc out of it as well. I've seen a few people do this, because it's like, oh, an orc dead body on the floor and a sword going into it. That's like quite a lot of attention. Just goes straight down to the base. So I like it when people do this on display pieces or competition pieces. It's the correct thing to do. Yeah, great work on the freehand. You could maybe just put like a bolder outline around the motif to help separate it out a bit. But I like the colours what you've done on the cape itself. I wasn't too sure about falling into shadow so aggressively on every single fold of the cape, because that's facing down. Light would get in there. I'd probably reserve the shadows for like up in these corners where you've done here, and then like a thin separation line. Really, I've got one of these lined up to paint, but I haven't got into it yet. But I'm not sure how these these shadows are really appropriate, like really strongly down here. Maybe watch out for that one next time. But the metals look great. You've got an opportunity to make this power node glow if you wanted. We've seen a couple of really nice ones where they've managed to paint the actual light reflection, like the pattern of diamonds coming out onto the inside of the cape. So there's a nice opportunity if you wanted to take it a little bit further. That looks so awesome when people do that. But yeah, great attention to detail. Oh, you could probably do some more edge highlights on the backpack. I know it's the back, but you free-handed the back, so you do care a little bit. So more edges on the power pack thing. That'd be great. Lovely work on the scrolls. That's all good. Dusty feet. Awful lot of really really good stuff here. Did I say anything else? Yeah, no, that's just a bit of a tidy up on the cape a little bit. So I think I meant by that, yeah, the outlining of the motif. Yeah. No, I got it all. Really, really good stuff, John. Thank you for that. That looks great. I look forward to painting my one. Robin is back. We don't even need to read his name, and we can tell that is Robin, can't we? Straight away with his majestic high elf scheme. And it's lovely to see you back again. Yeah, we don't care. More input on what went wrong, what could do better. Just provides more refining. The horse fur may be an issue. Not a big fan of long hair look. Just painting hashes. I can't make sense of the specular reflections of a shiny short horse coat. So they just look quite sheeny, really. It's just a very smooth transition, and it goes very, very bright. So brighter than this, and certainly brighter than the rump of the horse, which is one thing that I thought needed to stand out. So the rump here. So I mean, they do have musculature, obviously, on their legs, so you could push the highlight on the legs as well. But I think this is the correct direction, really. I mean, you can Google all day long and find very very fine haired horses and how the light behaves on it. But at the end of the day, you're painting a miniature and you're trying to sell an effect. So sometimes that involves painting texture that you wouldn't necessarily see at this scale. It's kind of a bit of a balancing act, because if you just did that as a straight, sheeny transition, because we're not looking at a life size horse, in front of us, and our brains can obviously, we know it's what it's made out of. You've got to try and sell that on a small plastic model. So sometimes you have to cheat and use the texture to your advantage in that way. But I love the texture that you've done up here. I think that's the right way to go. Just take that across the rest of Horsey, and I think you'll be golden with that. The metals, once again, are outstanding, especially the conical triple reflections in the helm, which are gorgeous. Some reflections of colour as well, coming off the purple head attire thing, feather feather is the right word, I think. So that's gorgeous, the way that's interfering up in there. That's really, really nice. Strong colour as well in the NMM, like the run of colour from light to dark is absolutely stunning once again. So yeah, and really nice natural looking basing as well. So I don't have a lot really. Like even the way you've highlighted this, the tail, like the way you've picked out the highlights, where you've picked them out, that's all bloody awesome. I think what happened here on the horse and what happened here on the horse just needs to happen on the rump and the legs a little bit more, and you'll be gravy. And I love how you're using the white wood bow. I remember talking about that last time, and yeah, just looks stunning. I love it. Again, it's beautiful. The gold is wonderful as well. Um, yeah, super work. Loving to see these again, man. Really, really love it. Let's have more, please. Thank you, Robin. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, not a lot to say. Very, very high end looking high elf here. The only part for the fur for me that doesn't really work is the mane, which I think is the bit you were dealing of an issue with. I think the tail is fine. The thing with the mane is you just need to think of it as a big volume first. Like there should be a big streaky highlight. Like if it's like a if it's if it was a curved piece of metal like that, you know where you put the highlight on there. So do it, and it should run in between and through the actual the kind of like linear reflections along the length of it. If that makes sense. There should be like a stripe that goes through the center of them all and kind of connects them together. Um, and yeah, and then just don't. You could probably make it a bit darker as well because at the moment it kind of looks more like it's a pale colored hair rather than it being a dark hair with a really strong sun reflection in it. I think it looks really good around the face. You know, with horses are very hard to paint, so it's always kind of trying to cut the difference. I think I personally think you could just get away with leaving the rump part out because it is a lot of hassle to get that exactly right, and there's enough going on already. But yeah, definitely the mane could do with being kicked up to being more reflective, and then like the NMM's really good. If I wanted to say something to just draw to your attention is that her kind of breastplate, like right up here under her throat, it's all very bright. Um, could have more shadow in there if you wanted, or not. Given that it's two panels, they're both facing up, but they're both facing different directions. Um, and then similarly, some of the barding has like flat panels that are kind of facing straight up, but it's hard to see because obviously this is from weird angles and stuff. But yeah, it's very nice. And then the texture on the cloak, all very good. I like the way, kind of similar to how I was saying about the hair, you've got like a stripe of light and then you've got the texture working up into it. I think the odd place, it could be a bit more like it's a little bit edge highlighty looking. Like there's bits where again it's hard to see, but like where it's like facing up, it wouldn't have a light along the edge, it'd have the light along the top bit there. And then similarly where it's like facing the ground, you could probably like reduce the amount of texture that we see in there because it's not super bright. Uh, like that's, I think it's just an aesthetic choice to be honest with you. Like if you didn't tell me I had to say something about it, I probably wouldn't have said anything about it. So there you go. Thanks a million for coming back, Robin. Hope you're doing well and look forward to seeing more from you in the future. And then that takes us at last to Christopher Arroyo. Did this ogre for RPGs, sketch and blend, instead of layering, and it is in the December review. Good job. You were a little bit late, but like we usually let people in with a little bit of leeway because we know it's only going to be we're not going to do it until the next Sunday of the month, and also people are busy this time of year. So all very good. I think the sketch and blend. So he said, yeah, I think it looks really good. Like there's very obvious defined areas of light and shadow that go throughout the model. It doesn't look like you've done that kind of inside outside highlighting. I think it's a very successful um, technique and attempt at the technique that you've done. I like how there's a bit of variety. Like he's got a very like tanned all over skin tone, but it does have like some variety to it, which is quite natural looking. And the whole piece overall has this nice like kind of harmonious color scheme with lots of like golds and kind of earth colors in it, which I think is really good. He's also nice because he looks kind of like not that threatening for an ogre. That makes sense. You're like he's could be like you need to roll a persuade check on this guy. Maybe you can get him to be on your side or whatever. Um, you could. So in the back, you've got very, very intense shadows, and you've kind of got like glossy finish in the shadows, which you might want to get rid of. Like you kind of like where the gloss is highlighted, there would be a highlight there, if that makes sense, because it's areas that are perpendicular to light source. Um, so I would look into getting rid of the glossiness and then maybe adding in your own highlight to match more with the way it's painted. And then you could have more extreme highlight in a couple of places, like on the top of his head, like where it's really shiny. Like go back again, do another layer of white, do another thin glaze of your flesh color, have like a teeny tiny dot of actual white there, because bald scalps, they're real shiny. And then you could have maybe on like it's probably not as much of an issue on like his pets and stuff, because unless he's like shaving himself and glossing up, it's not going to be as reflective along there. But it is an option. And then I would probably make his teeth, his two big tusks, a little bit less white. Like if you had them, might be like kind of. I mean, my teeth aren't this white. I don't think elephant tusks are this white. Probably you want to have some like little plaque, or like you can be white at the tips where they're reflecting, and have like a strip of white where because it's glossy or whatever. But I wouldn't go for just a pure white. Either layer up. That's a good place where layering does kind of work. Where you're doing like little do a bit around the gum line that's kind of in yellow, and then into a like a or brown into a yellow into a white then. Just because unless he's had his teeth bleached like really recently, they're not going to be this white. Yeah, really nice expression on the face. I think it's just generally like a really really nice looking RPG figurine. Jim.
Yeah, very good for this scale as well. I mean, most of the time ogres are a lot bigger than this, but that's what a 40 mil base, so that's kind of Space Marine type size. So a lot of these details are exceptionally small, like this necklace brooch, indeed the eyes and the teeth and the nipples, which is all very, very cleanly picked out. So kudos to you for your brush control, and like even like the separation around the dirty nails and everything. Like that's the details on the wood grain and stuff on the barrel. It's really, really detailed, finely detailed stuff. So hats off to you, man. This is really nice. I agree with Matt. Like the first thing that threw me was the amount of reflections that are picking up in your shadows. So map the boy down first, and I think that's going to help. But yeah, your technique I think is pretty good of sketching it out. It's all you smoothed it out really really nice. So next time I challenge you, just be a bit more aggressive with it. That's all, really. Higher highlights on upward facing, so like the belly, these sections of the chest, head, as Matt said, shoulders, tops of the fingers. The knee looks pretty bright, but again, I think that's the gloss that's doing it for you. And then when you spin it round like to the shoulders, too far again. There we go. Yeah, we don't have enough trouble in this musculature. It's mostly deep shadow sort of on the back, and that's right because it's kind of hulking over and blocking it out and sort of shading himself. But yeah, this much shadow would have more light. So yeah, just more aggressive on the volumetric highlightings, and I think it'd be golden. The metal looks really good. The club looks great. Could maybe rust, corrode some of the spiky, shardy bits, if indeed it is metal. I think it looks like gunmetal or silver or something. So you could corrode that up, maybe a little opportunity. And then there's just another layer of separation. I think would go a long way, like around the necklace and around this fur girdle that he's got going around his middle, just to separate that from the skin. Lovely shadow going down to the contrast there. Just black line it, a bit of black ink or whatever, just really separate it out. And that would be golden. And great work on the base as well. Nice painted tufts and a variety of shrubbery and faunas and flora. So yeah, and a little rune on a rock as well, which I've only just noticed as well. So yeah, good detail on the base as well, man. Lovely work at this scale. Lovely stuff. Thank you, Christopher. And I think that's it.
Cool. Thanks so much for watching the video. Stuck through to the end. Thanks so much, everyone, for submitting their pieces, and hopefully we've given you some constructive feedback to work on in the future. We'd love to see more submissions into the monthly review. The event will be going up on our Facebook page, Painters Motivating Painters, like in the next couple of days. So feel free to post through to the end of January 2025. Bye.